Hello students, welcome to the lecture of consumer behavior. Today we have got a new topic by the name of learning. This topic is totally based on psychology. So how consumers are learning, how they are giving preference to one brand, how they are rejecting another brands, all these things are based on learning. First, we should know the concept of learning. Then there are some psychological theories regarding to learning. So now come to the definition of learning. What is learning? What is the meaning of learning? What is the concept of learning? Learning means a permanent change in behavior which comes with experience. With the passage of time, consumers are having different experiences. So slowly and gradually they are learning about different brands, different products, different services. However, you should remember one thing, that this learning is not direct learning, but instead this learning is indirect learning. With the passage of time they are getting more and more knowledge. With the passage of time they are getting experience with a product or services, and they are building up a concept. So this concept, this meaning which they gives to a product comes with experience, and this is called learning. But you should remember one thing, that most of the time this learning is not, what we can say, that this learning is not intentional learning, but most of the time this learning is unintentional learning. So this learning which is unintentional learning, what does it mean? For example, we don't use a product, we don't buy a product, but still slowly and gradually a bunch of information, a large number of information is building up about that specific brand or product. So that is called incidental learning. Now what is the meaning of incidental learning? The causal or unintentional acquisition of knowledge about a product or service is called incidental learning. Means causally or unintentionally we are getting information by looking towards different ads on social media, electronic media, print media, or acquiring information from our friends when they are talking about a brand. Let's suppose a car, you are not having a car and you don't want to have that brand, or you are not having sufficient amount of money, but still you are learning something about that product, you are getting experience, you are getting knowledge about that brand or product. That is called incidental learning. Now, what psychologist says about this learning. Before going to their theories and explanation, you should remember one thing, that psychologist says that it is not internal process that they are learning something, but instead it is external process. Stimulus arises, an external factor comes out, and because of which this external factor or external stimulus goes to the mind of the consumer, and consumer shows a response, whether positive response or negative response, purchasing the product, rejecting the product, doing publicity for the product. So psychologist believes that learning process is not internal mind process, but there must be an external stimulus or external factor which makes the person to acquire knowledge about a product or service, and then in response to this knowledge they are showing their response. Before going to the explanation, you should remember this thing, that in learning is not internal process, but there must be an external factor, an external variable, or in a stimulus. Stimulus is always external factor. So behavioral learning theories. Before going to this explanation, you should remember one thing, that these theories, these concepts which I have written over here, classical conditioning and operant conditioning, you should remember one thing, that these two approaches or theories are based on black box model. Black box model, what does it say? That there is a stimulus or external factor goes to consumer mind, it is filtered over there in the mind filter of the consumer, and then he shows response. Stimulus means external factor, stimulus, consumer, and response. All psychologists are believing in this black box model. So furthermore, based on this black box model, I have explained black box model in previous classes very much detail. So based on the black box model, they have presented two approaches or two concepts or two theories. This weave is represented by two concepts. This weave or this behavioral learning theories is based on these two approaches. What are the names of those two approaches? Number one, classical conditioning approach. Number second, operant conditioning approach. Be with me so that we can reach to a conclusion and we can learn these two concepts or two theories. Classical conditioning. Okay, classical conditioning says that with one stimulus, I am giving you example, then you will understand it inshallah. That with one stimulus which compels the consumer to show his response, to learn something, there is a parallel another stimulus. And that another stimulus, that another factors becomes such a dominant that whenever the another parallel conditions come out or that the another stimulus arises, they show that specific response what they were showing to the first stimulus. I am giving you one example, then it will be crystal clear to you people. Classical conditioning. For the first time, a Russian psychologist, his name was Paul. Some other words were also there with his name, but he is famous with the name of Paul, P-A-U-L, Paul. He conducted this experiment on dogs. Whenever he was showing meat to the dogs, the saliva of the dog, in the mouth of the dog, saliva was secreted. You should, I don't know the meaning of saliva in Pashto or in Dari, but you should search it. Saliva comes out in our mouth when we see a good food. Okay, so when they were showing meat to the dogs, salivary glands were secreting the saliva in the mouth of the dog, and the dog was rushing to the meat and he was eating it. Now what he did, slowly and gradually, when the dogs were far away, he was ringing a bell, like a zang. He was ringing a bell, and this meat showing was one stimulus with which the saliva was secreted in the mouth of the dog, and ringing the bell was parallel stimulus with the first stimulus. Slowly and gradually, the dogs learned this behavior, that when they were listening to the bell rang by Paul, they were rushing out, and when they were checked, so the same saliva was secreted with the bell ring, which was secreted when they were looking towards meat. So the meat showing was first stimulus, and ringing the bell was another parallel stimulus. But slowly and gradually, the meaning of both the stimulus becomes similar to the dogs. So it means that with one stimulus, there is another stimulus, both of them are going parallel, and slowly and gradually the behavior of the consumers or dogs or people or living organism, that becomes similar for the first stimulus and second stimulus. So are parallel stimulus. Then with the passage of time, what further happens over there, he called it stimulus generalization or halo effect. What does it mean? Halo effect means that first saliva was secreted in the mouth of dogs when they were looking towards meat. Then they became familiar with ringing bell. the same saliva was secreted in their mouth. Then what happened next, that when they become very much familiar with the ringing bell, another sound that is similar to the bell ring was coming out. So the same saliva was secreted in the dog mouth. So now they were showing the response to the second stimulus, also showing the same response similar to the second stimulus. This is called stimulus generalization or halo effect. So this is called classical conditioning. Now probably you got it. Now second is operant conditioning. Operant conditioning means that human beings or animals or birds, they are showing a specific behavior if there is reinforcement for them. In simple words, I will tell you that human beings, animals or birds, they are showing a specific behavior for positive reinforcement, means for a reward, or for negative reinforcement, means to avoid themselves from punishment. They are showing a specific behavior. Like some people, they are having pigeons, dancing pigeons. When the pigeon is dancing, the person is giving a specific reward or food to the pigeon. That's why the pigeon is dancing. Or some birds are showing a specific dance. So that is another behavior. That is also positive reinforcement. So negative reinforcement, I will give you an example. In television, sometimes you are watching an ad, commercial, Elani Tijarati, that there is women gathering, girls party. Other girls have used a specific brand of perfume and they are asking from each other about that perfume. One girl that has not used that specific brand of perfume, so she is not liked by other girls and she is not given importance by other girls. So that is negative reinforcement. Means if you are not using that perfume in the party, you will not attract other females or girls towards yourself, or you can say that it is a type of punishment for female. So that is called negative reinforcement. However, we can say that people are showing a specific behavior whether to get specific reward, or they are showing a specific behavior. Specific behavior means purchasing or not purchasing. Specific behavior to avoid themselves from negative consequences, from punishment. So this is called operant conditioning. Now psychologist says that this black box model is represented by these two concepts. So this is how people are learning unintentionally, and they are gathering a large amount of information, large amount of knowledge about a product or service. This is how they are learning indirectly with the passage of time, and they are building up their concept regarding a specific product or brand. That is called learning. Listen to my words very carefully and write my each and every word. You should understand this incidental learning, behavioral learning theories. I told you that it is based on black box model. Further, black box model is clarified or elaborated by these two concepts or these two theories. Number one of which is classical conditioning. Number second is operant conditioning. In operant conditioning, we have two situations. Number one, positive reinforcement, that they are showing a specific behavior to get a reward, and they are showing a specific behavior to avoid themselves from punishment. This was our today lecture. Focus on your study, stay at your homes, be safe, be with me for coming classes. Khuda Hafiz.